Clayton Christopher is the founder of Sweetleaf Tea and Deep Eddy Vodka and Rhythm Superfoods, and he's also a sort of a mentor to many small business owners and startups, specifically those in the food and beverage space. And he's someone that we've tapped on the BevNet side of the business, which is our non-alcoholic counterpart. And he's spoken at some events before, and he's a really compelling speaker. He's going to tell his story of just kind of growing Sweetleaf Tea, now growing Deep Eddy Vodka, and some of the lessons he's learned as an entrepreneur. So how about a round of applause for Clayton Christopher?
Thanks, Chris. Had to get another beer. I get real nervous public speaking, and especially knowing that this is being streamed, I feel like I needed to play like Eye of the Tiger on the way here. But 2 beers definitely helps with that. Thanks to theCHIVE for to hosting the event here. I aspire to have a house this cool someday. So, loved hearing there's, what an amazing industry. The spirits industry, I think, is very similar to the beer industry. There's just, the amazing. I'm kind of more on the spirit side. I haven't gotten involved with any businesses on the craft beer side. But what I've noticed is there's been this huge growth and just surge of craft breweries opening up and craft spirits, distillers opening up as well. And it just says a lot about the consumer demand out there, and it just says a lot about what's going on in the industry and in our country right now, and it's awesome. It's very disruptive. The big guys don't know how to deal with it. It's also creates a very difficult and demanding climate that we have to deal with as business owners, as entrepreneurs. They're not really creating any new shelf space out there, but there's a new craft brewer open, it seems like every week here in Texas, or at least this shelf space that's being dedicated toward the beer set is being expanded much slower than the number of brands. So it's something certainly to take into consideration. And what I do is really, my goal is always to disrupt an industry in a friendly, positive sort of way, more on a national scale. So it's different than a lot of the goals that some of the craft spirits makers and some of the craft brewers will have when they open their brand. What I love about it is that this industry, because of the margins, and certainly, thank you for the lobbyists and the people getting together and some of the panelists up here that were speaking, of being able to sell direct, just helps immensely, and being able to create lifestyle companies to where you can make a living and pursue your dreams at the same time. I was just talking to Gustavo from Austin Eastsiders that I'm involved in, before this, and he was making big bucks in the tech industry before this, and now he's making cider and loving it. And I just think it's how fortunate we all are to be in this building right now, pursuing our dreams, because there's nothing better than that. Some of the things that Chris asked me to speak to some of the things today about what helped me along the way is I expanded Sweetleaf, and as we've expanded Deep Eddy Vodka. And so I made a few notes here to make sure I capture them, because the spirits industry, especially vodka, it's not cheap. It's an expensive space to play ball in. It's very marketing intensive, and there's a lot of big guys just trying to knock your head off. So you got to think outside the box, and you got to approach it with a lot of passion. But there's also some other things that. A bunch of mistakes I made at Sweetleaf growing that business. There was also a lot of things that we did right along the way that allowed us to survive and to thrive as a business. And I took a lot of that at Deep Eddy and said, hey, from day one, I want to try to work a lot smarter rather than harder. Because really at Sweetleaf, it was largely a story of especially in the early days, working a lot harder than smarter, because I just didn't have the smarts. But one of the main things was that really set us apart at Sweetleaf, and certainly we focus on at Deep Eddy, and I believe in any company that I get involved in, is just to focus on quality. I can't say enough about just focusing on quality in everything that you do, in your values, in your culture. I see a lot of companies and a lot of startups that just kind of put that to the side, and they think, oh, culture, we'll focus on that when we get bigger. Values, we'll focus on that when we get bigger. It's never too soon. You should focus on that from day one. If you don't know what you believe in, you'll fall for anything. And you're going to be faced with so many tough decisions on cutting costs and how to get by on less, that unless you know what you're willing to take a financial hit for, you'll end up compromising those values. And when you do that, it's going to hurt your culture, it's going to hurt the environment of your workplace, and it's going to have really negative repercussions. But when you focus on that early on, luckily we did that at Sweetleaf, and we did that at Deep Eddy from day one. It's so much easier to put your flag in the ground and know what you stand for. It's a lot easier. Your branding is going to be, it's crazy all the things that come from that you wouldn't think would be intrinsically attached to it. Your branding is going to be stronger. Your packaging, which is the other thing that's so key, is going to be stronger because you're just going to have a better DNA, and you're going to know what resonates and what doesn't resonate with that DNA of your brand. So I'd say, packaging. The best marketing spend that you'll ever make is, in the highest ROI of any marketing spend, is going to be on packaging. I mean, this is kind of proven over and over again, and it's awesome. I would say that most of the craft beers and the beers that I see out there, especially in the craft industry, have got way better packaging than a lot of the other kind of consumer products categories out there, and I think it's just part of the natural creativity that comes from creating delicious craft beers is going to translate into great packaging. But I can't, just instill in you enough that, like, how important beautiful packaging is. You've got 2 seconds to capture the consumer's attention, and that packaging, the price isn't going to get them there, because nobody in this room, none of us are going to be the low-cost providers. So we've got to have amazing product, but that packaging is what's going to get them there the first time. And then the quality of that product is going to get them back again and again, and the strength of that brand. And people. I'd say early on, I used to think that I couldn't afford to hire the best and the brightest, but at Sweetleaf, we didn't really start to grow until I hired people that were smarter than me. In the early days, my ego got in the way of the business a lot. I wanted to be the smartest person in the room. I wanted to have all the answers. I didn't have any experience, so when I would get surrounded by people that were a lot smarter than me, I'd get intimidated. It was great having mentors, but it was very intimidating sometimes having people on my team that were a lot smarter than me. And I wish, if I could go back and do it over again, I would have brought in some people on our team that could have helped us scale a lot faster, because they would have kept us from stepping in a lot of the potholes that I stepped in along the way. So now I truly believe that I can't not afford to hire the best and the brightest from day one. It doesn't mean that I can build out some massive team, but it certainly, if I can afford to hire one salesperson, I want them to be the absolute best. They've got to match with our values and the culture of the company. But the first person that Chad Aller, my business partner at Deep Eddy, the first person we hired at Deep Eddy was the VP of sales for the spirits division of Republic, who's our distributor here in Texas. Because he had the Rolodex. He knew all the buyers and was going to help us to be able to get into the liquor chains where most of our volume is done. So very different, kind of just a shift in the way that I think now. I can remember bringing in finally a kind of a CFO, COO at Sweetleaf early on, Brian Goldberg, very involved in the consumer products industry here locally. And man, I was so intimidated by him. I didn't have a college degree. He was like, Wharton, MBA from, some big Ivy League school after Wharton. And I was really intimidated by him, but I swear it made the company so much stronger. And now it's like I I want to make sure that I'm always the dumbest guy in the room. I'm kind of like a generalist at everything, but I want to make sure that in each, whether it's in operations or whether it's in sales or whether it's in marketing, it's people that are incredibly passionate about what they're doing there. They have a lot of experience, and there's a high degree of trust. So super key there. The other thing was mentors. I had some awesome mentors at Sweetleaf that helped me. A guy named Bill McGoy that was an older gentleman that just really, he had forgotten more than I knew at the time about the non-alcoholic beverage industry. But there's so much wisdom and tribal knowledge out there for us as entrepreneurs to have to go down that journey and that path and learn everything on our own. That's a very expensive path, and I don't want to waste any money on an expensive education and not having that sort of experience. And it's amazing. People want to give back. I've been amazed at the people that I've been able to get to help me along the way simply for asking for help. A couple other people that were mentors to me along the way, Tom First, that was one of the founders of Nantucket Nectars, Mo Siegel, who's the founder of Celestial Seasonings. Both these guys said no when I asked them if they would join my board, and I'd give them some stock. But as any scrappy entrepreneur, you don't take no for an answer. So like with Mo, I told him, hey, I'm going to be in Boulder in 2 weeks. I'm going to be there for the entire week. Can I at least buy you a cup of coffee? And finally he said, yeah, come by my office at 3 o'clock, on Tuesday. I wasn't planning on being in Boulder, but I made sure that I got on a plane real quick. And the same thing with Tom First at Nantucket Nectars. I mean, he was just like, no, I'm too busy. No, I'm too busy. And I was relentless. I wouldn't stop. I kept hammering him. And sure enough, finally he said yes. And those people were just really pivotal in the growth of the business. The other thing when I think about mentors is just, obviously the people in the room, if you're attending a discussion like this, you've got it. But it's really embracing, I'd say, a learner's versus a knower's mindset. One of the things that I see pretty regularly in companies in this industry, whether it's beer or spirits or even the natural food industry, but entrepreneurs in general in food and beverage, one of the biggest reasons that I see that they fail is they tend to have more of a knower's mindset than a learner's mindset. And, a learner's mindset, you really kind of got to get out of the way of yourself and reach out to other people. Trade magazines. There's so many awesome online publications that, become an expert and devote, yourself to becoming an expert at this craft. And that's going to take, meeting with other people, and it's continually education. And the industry changes so much, as you just heard from some of the panel up here. I truly believe that if you think you know it all, you're going to get your head knocked off. So, I can tell you around Deep Eddy, and certainly myself, operate from a place of passion, but there's always a healthy dose of fear, because you just never know what's coming around the next corner and what's going to change. So I would encourage you to embrace a learner's mindset versus a knower's mindset, and be on guard against that in your organization when you see people in your organization that are just getting a little too smart for themselves. Sound strategy. You always hear kind of sales strategy and marketing strategy, but it's true. If if you don't know where you're going, somebody else is going to push you there. There's so many opportunities for growth, and early on, you're so desperate for revenue. I oftentimes find myself early on with a business is wanting, I'm willing to say yes to anything if it's going to bring dollars in the door. But I can tell you, it is really easy to yes yourself to death, to yes yourself right out of business. I can tell you all sales are not good sales. So you need to be, if you don't know what you're going to say yes to, you'll say yes to anything. So I'd encourage you to know what your yeses are, and then say no a lot. If you're not saying a lot more no's than yeses, then you probably need to tighten up your sales and marketing strategy. I remember talking to Kurt Widmer about 4 years ago when I was still at Sweetleaf, and it's so simple, because when you hear like a good marketing strategy or a good sales strategy, it's not rocket science. I mean, I wouldn't be up here if it was rocket science. But I remember he was saying how one of the criteria they set down is before they go into a market, one, they always lead with their wheat beer. You know, they had a flagship that they felt like really differentiated themselves from the competition. But they were also very disciplined in making sure that they got on X number of tap handles in a particular market before they would ever allow their bottle sales in there. Could be the right strategy for them, could be the wrong strategy for somebody else, but it's a strategy. And it worked for them. And they said a lot of no's. They had distributors, I remember, that were pissed at them because they were wanting bottles. And they had retailers that were saying yes, that they would bring in the bottles, but they would not give the bottles to them until they achieved X number of tap handles, because they wanted that liquid past the lips. At Deep Eddy, when we first started, we started with a sweet tea vodka because we felt like there was a way for us to differentiate by using honey and real tea leaves versus high fructose corn syrup and caramel color like some of our competitors out there. So our goal, we said, until we're number one in the little but relevant category, in the sweet tea vodka category in Texas, until we're number one, we're not setting foot outside the state. I don't care how long that takes us. And it took us about 16 months. But, we put all of our effort and energy just in Texas, and within 16 months, and even though it wasn't that big of a category, we were able to become number one, because we knew if we couldn't be number one in Texas, we couldn't be number one anywhere. So once we did that, we then moved out to a couple of other states, and we set the same goal. We said until we're going to be number one in Colorado and Georgia, which are our next two states, we're not setting foot outside of these borders. So it was really, it was a philosophy of like narrow and deep versus wide and shallow. And I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs that are craft brewers, that are cider makers, that are spirits makers, and they want to get, it's, the allure of like, oh my gosh, our brand would do awesome in New York. We have people calling us from LA. We have retailers calling us from this state. It's like, big deal. That's always going to be there. You really have to create this, like, your castle in your backyard. So this narrow and deep versus wide and shallow approach, it really has to do, like, the way that I approach it, the way that our team approaches it at Deep Eddy, it's like we can't begin to spend as much money and do all the marketing that Absolute Vodka can do in the U.S. We'll never be there. We'll never be that big. But even right now, we can't afford to spend as much as they do in Texas. But early on, we said, you know what? We can afford to go up against them in Austin. We may not be able to afford to go up against the big players anywhere else outside of Austin because we just don't have the pockets, but we can do it here, and this is our backyard, so let's focus on that first. And we did, and we're now celebrating our 5th year as of March next year, and we're outselling Absolute in Texas, and it's phenomenal, yes. But it's like, had we not had that narrow and deep approach versus kind of that wide and shallow and that allure to want to go into all these other markets, I wouldn't be standing up here right now, or maybe I would just be talking about Sweetleaf and not Deep Eddy. Yeah, I would just make sure that you've got a sound strategy. And I see a lot of companies waste a lot of money, a lot of brands early on doing marketing too much marketing outside of the stores. The bars, the restaurants, the liquor stores, the grocery stores. It's like, focus your dollars on where you can influence the sale. I see brands launch and they want to do festivals and they want to, go to, if you feel like the right strategy is to get your product past people's lips, do it at a place where you can influence the sale. Now once you're in 50% of the given accounts in a marketplace, yeah, maybe billboards is right for you, maybe TV's right for you. You have to answer that, what feels right for your brand. But I see a lot of companies waste too much money on doing consumer marketing way too soon versus trade marketing inside the stores. The fourth, I'd say, live in the stores. I made this mistake some early on, but I corrected it quickly, and it's something that I see happen a lot with other entrepreneurs is, you're not going to grow your business inside an office or inside a brewery. It's going to happen in bars. It's going to happen in restaurants. It's going to happen influencing retailers to give you better shelf placement, to give you a little more back stock because they're running out of stock. So it's like, every time you walk into a grocery store, shake that manager's hand, let him know that you're there. There's always room for improvement. I mean, we teach all of our people that if as soon as you walk into a store, there's always a favor that you can ask. I remember when I used to drive delivery vans at Sweetleaf, and I had routes every day because I wanted to be in the stores. As I knew the name of that manager or that backdoor person at the grocery store. I knew how many kids she had, if they were playing baseball. I mean, I would keep notes. Because, I found out who are the people that are, it's a relationship business. And who are the people that are making the decisions, and how can I, influence them so I can grow my brand. So, but I just see too many people wanting to hang out inside their business, whether it's a brewery or inside the office, and that is not where your business is going to grow. And I can tell you is principals of your business or an owner or a founder of your business, nobody is going to be more influential than you guys, and you can't do that inside the office. So get out there. Lack of capital, fifth thing. This sounds crazy, but early on, especially for me, not having experience, a lack of capital was actually a blessing. Had I started Sweetleaf with $1 million check from some big investor, I would not be standing here today, I can promise you. I started it with about $12,000 that lasted me for almost a year before I had to go to my dad begging and give up equity to him to match my $12,000 investment with another $12,000. But literally, it taught me so much resourcefulness. I had a van with 300,000 miles on it that I got for I think it was like $1,800, broke down most of the time. So my Honda Accord was the backup vehicle. But then I had to create my garden hoses. That was my first filler. Even at Deep Eddy when we first started, and I had some money to start it then, we had a 4-head little hand, filler and a hand capper. And so we could have started with bigger, but we knew that our goal was just to be #1 in Austin and then in the rest of Texas. So we didn't need some big rotary filler with all the bells and whistles. So, that resourcefulness that you learn early on is just, it's invaluable, and it's hard to do that. I just see a lot of entrepreneurs, and I've seen a number of craft, people in the beer industry that are starting up. They don't have a lot of experience, and they've got their pitch book, and they've got the pretty charts and the pretty graphs, and they're like going out to raise millions. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this isn't the way to do it. So I would just say, you're going to make smaller steps. You're going to make smaller mistakes when you have less money to waste, because you're just going to make mistakes. It's inevitable. And, then after you get your legs under you and you learn what's working for your brand and what's not working for your brand, then you can push on the gas pedal in a hard way. I mean, we raised millions of dollars at Sweetleaf, and we've had to raise a good bit of money at Deep Eddy, but we didn't do it until I felt really comfortable pushing on the gas pedal, so I knew that money would be spent wisely. A couple of crazy stories I'll tell you before we bring Chris up here for a little Q&A, but there's lack of resources also in the creativity that it forces upon an entrepreneur are huge. I can remember times where we couldn't afford our product liability insurance, and it's unfortunately you have to make tough decisions as an entrepreneur. It's not just always black or white decisions. And I called on HEB a couple of times. They like the product. They starting to see our product show up on the data, in the scan data, but they wanted these huge slotting fees, and I couldn't afford it. And so finally they called us, and I went in and gave them the dog and pony show. And they said, all right, we'll bring you in, we're going to put you in all these stores, but, we have some slotting fees. I was like, we can't afford to pay the slotting fees. So they waived that, and they're like, just fill out this paperwork, just want to make sure you've got $5 million worth of product liability insurance and whatnot on the list. And I'm nodding my head yes. Like, oh yeah, we got all that stuff. I was like, $5 million worth of product liability insurance. And I think we had like $500,000 at the time. And so I call the insurance guy, he gives me a quote. I'm like, oh my gosh, an extra $400 a month. There's no way I can afford that. And so, like any scrappy entrepreneur, I just, scanned that document and got the white out and put an extra digit on the 500 and faxed it back over to HEB, and boom, we're in like 200 accounts. So, but then, then about 3 months later, after we finally got paid, I was able to afford the product liability insurance. But we even had, we had drivers driving around without vehicle insurance, at certain times, just because I couldn't afford it. And it was either like make payroll or pay for the vehicle insurance. I don't know what you guys would do. I don't know if there's a right answer to that, but my choice was like, I'm going to make payroll so we stay in business and live to fight another day. So, there's going to be those choices that we all face along the way, and you got to just be ready to lean into it hard and do whatever it takes. So my last, and I guess this is number 6 on my list, is just around persistence and patience. It's not how many times you get knocked down that counts. It's how many times you get up that counts, and that's by Vince Lombardi. But if you're starting a business like that's really what it's all about, because you're going to take a lot of licks, but it's how you take those licks, and it's dusting yourself off, and it's learning from them, because it's going to build a lot of character. So I think we're going to open it up for a little Q&A here.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you. How about a round of applause for Clayton?
Cheers.
Now I get to have a sip of beer.
Yeah. Quench your thirst, my man. So Clayton, had a lot of good things to say about just sort of scrappiness and resourcefulness, and I guarantee those Chive guys back there are like, do not set that beer on the pool table. I'm being very careful. So, I sort of wrote down this thing of, 5 questions that every entrepreneur should be able to answer. And I think it really kind of touched on some of the points that you made as well. And, sort of the questions I wrote down were like, why are you in business? What makes your product different? Who's your ideal customer, and how do you move beyond that? What's your ultimate vision, and what's your exit strategy? And, I think the exit strategy piece of it is something that's, sort of relevant for not only having you here in this discussion, but relevant for where we are right now in craft beer. There's a lot of established breweries that are sort of figuring out that piece. Walk me through that process a little bit when, for those of you who don't know, he sold to Nestle in 2011. Walk me through that process of kind of figuring out, is it time to give up this this baby that I've built and my project, and what's going through your mind at that time?
Sure. I think you kind of need to know, and I think you mentioned in one of the questions, when you start your business, you've got to have a vision for it. And I'm not saying just a vision in terms of like what your place is in the industry and how you want to influence it. But, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want this to be a lifestyle company? Do you want to grow it and sell it? Do you want to grow it and take it public? So, for me at Sweetleaf, it was really, when I was raising some money in the early days, it was my dad, trying to get $12,000 from him, just because if I didn't, we were going to go out of business. And then I raised some money from some other investors about a year later, because if I didn't, we were going to go out of business because our margins sucked, which is why I'm not in the non-alcoholic beverage business anymore. But, so at Sweetleaf, there wasn't ever this grand vision of like, oh, we want to get big and sell to Nestle. It was really, we wanted to change the industry. I mean, Snapple, once we started outselling Snapple in Texas, they switched to cane sugar. And I don't want to say we're the ones that did that, but I think that we certainly influenced that, and to have a company like as big as Snapple that was so much bigger than us, but not in our backyard because we focused here so much, to have them focus from high fructose corn syrup to cane sugar, like that was so exciting. We had people in our company that were scared, but I was like, no, we should be doing high fives. We're disrupting. So it was really, though, once we kind of started to raise from more sophisticated investors, if you're going to take other people's money, you got to show a way for them to get their money back. Unless you're a 501c3 and you're a nonprofit, most people that are investing in a business want to see some way to get a return, whether it's a profitable company that's spitting off dividends, which it's tough to do that and really grow your brand at the same time, or whether it is a sell to a larger company. So at Sweetleaf, we ultimately knew that we wanted to scale this thing and it was going to get acquired at some point. And for us, that's always a controversial thing because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, sell out. But for us, it was really like, my goal, and I said this early on, I was like, if I ever see like a dude in a hard hat in New York City drinking a bottle of organic, better for you Sweetleaf tea, better for you than a lot of our competitors, I was like, that is success. It wasn't looking at the bank account. Like that's when I knew I would have like, quote, made it. And so that we were going to be able to do that much quicker and much faster under the umbrella of a larger company. And we did get to New York, although I didn't see a guy in a hard hat, but I saw some other people drinking Sweetleaf. But,
So it's about having that broader vision that really leads to the discussion internally of, what do we do going forward if this situation arises where somebody actually wants to buy us?
All right, so I would just encourage everyone to be very thoughtful if you're raising capital for your business. Just be very thoughtful on what is that plan and how much you believe in that plan, because ultimately you kind of owe it to investors to show them a return on their money and kind of to do what you say you're going to do, or at least make your best effort to.
So let's take a quick step backwards then. Before you were able to sell to Nestle, there obviously had to have been a number of things that you had to do to prepare the brand itself to be sold. So in your first couple of years, what was one of the smallest changes that you made that had the biggest results or the biggest impact?
Smallest changes, there's a couple of things that come to mind when you say that. Just once we really started spending a lot more time in the stores, just doing demos nonstop, getting the product past people's lips, that was a real game changer, I'd say, really early on. And then getting the company more, I'd say, corporatized a little bit and dressed up, I don't want to say for sale, but just to a place where more sophisticated investors would come in, and a company like Nestle would be interested as like trademark. That's stuff that we did not do a very good job on early on, and it caused a lot of headaches. It almost made the whole sale with Nestle, like we were down to the line, the whole thing almost fell apart because of trademark issues. And it was a crazy, a letter that another company sent threatening us. It was in a completely different category. But anyway, focus, getting your intellectual property and your trademark. I hate spending money on attorneys, and that's part of the business, just depletes my energy. But I'd encourage you early on, even if no matter what your size is to make sure your intellectual property and your trademark and all that stuff is super tight.
I think John might kill me for this, but we were walking around here earlier today, and they got a pretty cool vibe going through here. John just kind of walks around, shouts at people. People are very friendly with him. And it seems like he's a great person to work for. So what's it like to work for you? Because a lot of these folks in this audience are growing their companies. They're hiring people. What's it like to work for Clayton Christopher?
Oh, gosh. Well, we got one of my closest friends and our VP of marketing, our marketing guru, Brandon, is here. So I don't know, maybe we should ask Brandon. But I know I wouldn't want to work for me. When I think about like what it's, I'm... And Brandon, you may say, I would describe me as very demanding. It's like a never-ending pursuit of perfection. I totally understand we're never going to get there, but you have to have that attitude that you're kind of constantly, whether it's packaging, whether it's product. But I'd say loving too. I like to think of the people that I work with as kind of friends. And if they don't cut the mustard, they can still be my friend. I'm just not going to pay them. But. But so it's like friendly, but very demanding. Brandon, what's it?
The way he's talking right now is how he sounds at work. All day long, every day. It's inspiring. It's great. Always comes from a place of passion and experience, with all the best intentions, and it's great. It's terrific, and that's why I'm here right now listening.
So.
I'm feeling good just listening to him. I want to go back to work.
It's a good feeling to have. So
you just got a raise.
And thank God you just gave me the perfect segue, because literally the next question on this sheet of paper is, how do you stay inspired? So thank you for that. Clayton, what's some suggestions? I mean, there's a lot of competition out there in the craft beer space right now. There's a lot of new competitors coming in. I think for most craft brewers, it's pretty easy to get up every day and know that what they're doing they actually love. They're going into the brew house, they're brewing every day, they're making products that they appreciate, that they know their customers appreciate. But I think every once in a while, every business owner has that feeling of like, why am I doing this? Or why am I waking up early every day? Or why am I out at the bars late trying to sell my product in? So how do you stay inspired?
I try to, and it's different for everyone, and I think that's the most important thing. You need to know what inspires you, and protect that, dearly. But I'd say what inspires me is hanging out with other inspiring people, surrounding myself with people that are super positive, that I learn from, that I trust and can feel vulnerable with. It's spending time resting. I'd say that I made a lot of stupid decisions early on at Sweetleaf because I was working 90, sometimes 100 hours a week, sleeping up at the office. I had a sleeping bag there and toothbrush because that was 15 minutes home and 15 minutes back. That was another 30 minutes of sleep. So, you just make bad decisions when you're tired. I'd rather have a 8 to 9 hour day of sharp decisions than a 12-hour day of mediocre decisions. And if you're working 12 hours every day, 6 days a week, trust me, your decisions are mediocre. Get 8 hours of sleep, get plenty of rest, take some vacations, read other stuff. So yeah, a little bit of exercise, surrounded by people that inspire me, continue to always have mentors, and plan. Getting away from the business and relaxing and resting. The creativity that it sparks is it's invaluable.
Awesome. Well, Clayton, I really appreciate the insight tonight. Speaking of playing and resting, let's go have some more food and beers right now and play a little bit at the Chive. Thank you so much. What a round of applause. Before I jump off stage, just a quick shout out one more time to the Chive for hosting us, our gracious sponsors for making this all happen, Owens, Illinois and Portland Kettle Works. I saw some of you guys taking photos. If you guys do have photos, share it on Instagram or Twitter with us using the hashtag Brew Talks. We'd love to see what you guys put out there. And if you like what we did tonight, we'll be doing this type of thing for a full day out in San Diego. Our full day business conference, Brewbound session in December, on December 4th, I believe. Hope I'm getting that right. I've had a few KCCOs tonight. So on that note, let's have one more. Cheers.
Hey, and a quick. We just opened our tasting room at the new Deep Eddy Distillery outside of Austin in Dripping Springs. So you can come take a tour of the distillery, see how we distill our vodka. It's very transparent. Love to have you all out there.
All right. Let's go drink some vodka.